Hello everyone, and welcome back to Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. Today we're going to take a look at Charles and how he was as a father before and after the death of Princess Diana. The birth of William. Princess Diana wanted to give birth to William in a hospital instead of being at the palace, and she gave birth to William at the Lindo wing of St. Mary's in London. And this was unusual because royals usually had their babies at the palace, and Princess Anne she broke that tradition too by going to the same hospital as Diana did when she had her kids. So Prince William was the first heir to be born in a maternity ward. And the princess didn't want to be drugged to have the baby. She wanted to be active in the process. And she also requested that Prince Charles hold her during the process, saying Charles looked strong enough to hold her, and that is what happened. It was the first act of royal birth, a complete contrast to the Queen's reflection that with modern anesthesia, birth had become a sleep and a forgetting. And according to Yahoo.com, Princess Diana had an induced pregnancy, and Prince William was born on June 21st, 1982. Princess Diana added, "Anyway, the boy arrived, great excitement, thrilled, everyone absolutely high as a kite. We found a date where Charles could get off his polo pony for me to give birth, and that was very nice. I felt grateful about that." And later, Prince Charles recalled his memories of the happy day in a letter to his godmother, Patricia Barrowborn. He said, "I'm so thankful I was beside Diana's bedside the whole time because by the end of the day, I really felt as though I shared deeply the process of birth, and as a result was rewarded by seeing a small creature which belonged to us, even though he seemed to belong to everyone else as well," he wrote, as reported by the Town and Country. So Prince Charles, he was different too by being there for the birth of the baby, something that men who were royal didn't usually do. So after that, royal dads were there with their wives, including William and Harry being there with their wives during the deliveries of their babies. Creating a royal tradition, the image of the couple posing happily on the hospital steps with their newborn has since become a tradition that William himself continued with his own children. So how did they handle being parents? Well, it looked like things were perfect after the birth of William, but Diana, in an interview for her biography in 1992, told People magazine she described suffering from postnatal depression. In Andrew Morton's book, Diana, Her True Story, in which Diana was actually the secret voice behind the information, she talked about how she felt about having her child. "Came home and then postnatal depression hit me hard, and it wasn't so much the baby that produced it, it was the baby that triggered off all else that was going on in my mind." She said, "Boy, I was troubled." She realized she needed time and space, and in time she got out of the depression. So when Prince Charles and Diana had to do a tour of Australia and New Zealand in 1983, they decided to take William with them. So this was different than what happened to him, Charles that is, and Princess Anne. Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip left them behind on their tours, and they were left with nannies and the Queen Mother for long periods of time. But they took William, and so William delighted Prince Charles by crawling, prompting Charles to write, "We laughed and laughed with sheer hysterical pleasure, and now we can't stop him crawling around everywhere." And then Prince William was born in 1982, and then Prince Harry was born in 1984. Prince Charles of the second pregnancy, Harry was born September 15th, 1984. According to the Princess Diana, Charles was disappointed that it wasn't a baby girl. Diana said, "Charles and I were very, very close to each other the 6 weeks before Harry was born, the closest we've ever been and ever will be," she remembered. "Then suddenly, as Harry was born, it just went bang, our marriage. The whole thing went down the drain." And Diana knew the sex of the baby but didn't tell Charles until the baby was delivered. Charles wanted 2 children, and he wanted a girl, she explained. By keeping the knowledge a secret until the delivery, the letdown came as a complete surprise. She alleges her husband's initial response was, "Oh God, it's a boy," followed by, "and he's even got red hair." And she admitted that the birth of Harry wasn't the cause of their marriage dissolving, but knowing he was having an affair with Camilla had a lot to do with it. This affair began after Charles found out that Princess Diana had been having an affair. According to the documentary about King Charles entitled "The Boy Who Walks Alone," Alan Peters revealed to the New York Post, "I can categorically say that the first person who strayed in the marriage was the Princess of Wales. Charles didn't until after he knew she had strayed, and I'm speaking now about all this because I've said nothing for 40 years. I've just listened to lies and silly stories, and it's quite frustrating. There are only a few of us that can say what really happened," he shared. How they spent time with their kids. Princess Diana wanted the kids to be down to earth, so she enrolled them in public schools took them to fast food restaurants and to amusement parks. But Charles was work-driven just like his mother, but that didn't mean he couldn't spend time with his kids. Charles was more of a traditionalist, spending time with them out of the public gaze, teaching them to fish and to shoot and enjoy country pursuits. He also enjoyed reading to them, as his father had done with him. According to TheRake.com, after the prince and princess separated in 1992, Charles spent more time with his sons on a one-to-one basis, and as they grew older, he shared his interests with them, involving them in music, painting, and the theater, taking them privately to plays at the Stratford-upon-Avon. According to GoodHousekeeping.com, Charles, William, and Harry often spent time together at Broadfield, Prince Charles's farm, in Balmoral, the royal family estate in Scotland. His sons revealed in a 2015 documentary that he used to laugh in all the wrong places at their school plays and sent them handwritten notes, but his penmanship was so bad they couldn't tell if he was writing to scold them or to praise them. And next we have Princess Diana's death. According to Tina Brown's book, The Diana Chronicles, released in 2008, the couple had become friends after the divorce, though Diana was said to still have feelings for the prince. The claim has never been officially confirmed. But Charles got into the habit of dropping in on her at Kensington Palace, and they would have tea and a sort of rueful exchange, Brown wrote, according to Elle magazine. And they even had some laughs together. It was definitely calming down. The boys were older. They talked about their philanthropies, and she accepted Camilla. And one thing she had finally done was really understand that Camilla was the love of his life, and there was just nothing she could do about it. But she said to me at that lunch that she would go back to Charles in a heartbeat if he wanted her, Brown wrote. Royal expert Christopher Anderson, who recently penned a book on the new monarch titled The King, The Life of Charles III, said, royal aides said that they were shocked about how Prince Charles was when he received the news of Diana's death by phone. They said he was ashen and his hand was trembling when he was on the phone, and after the call, one witness described it as a howl of anguish coming from Charles. Palace staff rushed over to Charles's room and found him collapsed in an armchair, weeping uncontrollably, the royal author also shared. And then Anderson went on to state, I don't think people realize how stricken he was by her death. I interviewed the nurses in the hospital who saw him when he came into the room and saw her body for the first time, and he looked like he'd been hit in the face. He reeled back, and they thought he was going to faint. And they were surprised to see how emotional Charles was after her death. But then he snapped into action and made sure the Queen gave Diana the proper send-off, the author concluded. In the documentary, The Boy Who Walked Alone, it was said, when Prince Charles went to Paris to bring Diana home, he went to the room where she was and stayed there and cried. And then Prince Charles broke the news to his boys in 1997. Prince Harry said, our dad was there for us. He was the one out of the two left, and he tried his best to make sure that we were protected and looked after, he added, but he was going through the same grieving process as well. Another article said that William and Harry acted up at times because their dad was busy with work and continuing a relationship with Camilla. And the insider said, William and Harry attended Eton College, an elite boarding school, as teenagers, but they also spent time at their father's home, Highgrove House, throughout their adolescence, and the king often wasn't there with them, as one of Charles's former aides told the author. The boys wanted their independence, and they probably had too much of it, the unnamed former aide told Nickel. Often when they wanted to speak to their father, he wasn't around, and because he didn't carry a cell phone with him, they would get frustrated that they couldn't get a hold of him. If they needed him, they'd end up calling his protection officers so they could talk to him, which wasn't ideal. But Charles, he didn't like spontaneous conversations like texting or unexpected calls. He liked to have more time in a conversation. Charles also relied on close family friends to help with the raising of the boys. And William and Harry loved those families but still wanted their father's attention more. And it's funny that Charles always wanted more of his mother's attention, but she was busy with work and duty to the country, and Charles ended up being like her. Now Charles is a grandfather, and he enjoys this role too. Insiders say he's a warm and caring person who loves spending time with his grandchildren. So I'm glad to find out that Prince Charles and Princess Diana were able to become friends. And Charles loved his time as a father, and even though he wasn't there with them as much as he could have been, William and Harry knew that he loved them. Now that Charles is king, he and William have become closer as they do their jobs as working royals. Harry at this point is not as close to everyone as he could be due to his interviews and in his book, bringing up incidents that he knew his dad and brother, being part of the royal family, could not respond to publicly. Hopefully one day he will try and make amends and they can all be closer again. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and if you did, if you could give it a thumbs up, it would help the channel out. And be sure to click on the bell and you'll be notified whenever a new video is released. I hope everybody's been having a good day, and be sure to tune in again soon for another episode of Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. Thank you. Bye.